Sail University began in May 2009 when I received a random email from the Education, Media Design, and Technology Master's Program. After I read the email, I contacted the school and talked to an advisor who told me about the program, told me about all of the courses that I would be taking, told me about all of the software that I would receive and that I would learn how to use, and I was hooked. I absolutely had to come to Full Sail University. So I talked to some of my colleagues who advised me to make sure that Full Sail was reputable and make sure that it was accredited. So I did. 2 weeks of receiving the email, I had submitted all of the necessary paperwork and was scheduled to take classes in the beginning of June 2009. And it's a decision that I have not regretted. I've learned so much from my professors and my classmates, and there is absolutely no doubt that my curriculum will benefit and that my students will benefit from the knowledge that I've gained over the past year. I learned how to incorporate music and movies into my curriculum and make both mediums meaningful. I learned how to use games in my classroom so that students are learning and having fun at the same time. I learned how to create a website using Adobe Flash, Photoshop, and Dreamweaver, and I had a ton of fun doing it. Most importantly, this program has reinforced the importance of collaboration. And all of these things are going to make me a much better teacher. My most influential class from this entire program was Emergent Technologies in a Collaborative Culture during month 4. This was the class that led me to the topic for my action research project. During week 2, Dr. Siegel had us write a blog posting on media literacy, and I wrote about how much the media has changed in the last 10 to 15 years. And while I was writing, I remembered that my previous school system had blocked image searches online the previous spring, and they had done this with no warning or explanation. And I remember being confused and very enraged because my students missed a major project. As a result, I wrote an equally long, unrequired blog posting detailing the event and my anger. And I went as far as comparing our government and the way they control our media to 1984 by George Orwell. But after writing the blog posting and talking to Joe Bastillos, I had the topic for my action research project, which is the constitutionality of internet filtering and its effect on media literacy. In October of 2009, I finally began research for my literature review, and surprisingly, there's not a lot of literature that casts an opinion on the filtering debate. The number of articles that supports internet filtering is very low compared to the number that opposes filtering, and most of the literature written about filtering is neutral. Either the articles describe what filtering is and why we have it, or they describe what filtering does and how it works. The subject of internet filtering and its pros and its cons and its alternatives needs more research. And my action research project unfortunately doesn't cast an opinion. Personally, I don't support filtering in its current state, but my research shows that filtering is indeed constitutional, so my project would probably fall in the neutral category. After I completed my research for my literature review, I began my own cycles of research. And when I started out, I had the intention of taking the knowledge that I gathered from my literature review and presenting that information to a list of former colleagues, former teachers, former students, and some IT specialists that I knew. And I wanted to interview these people for my first cycle, but that didn't happen. Time and money kind of worked against me. I was unemployed for my first cycle, and I couldn't travel as would have been required for the interviews. So I took a passive-aggressive approach and posted those same open-ended questions on 2 different Ning sites with the hopes that many people would reply. After my first cycle of research ended at Christmas, only 5 people had responded. A friend and classmate here at Full Sail suggested that I rewrite my questions and create a survey on SurveyMonkey.com. She said that it would be easier for me to gather my data and more people would be likely to answer my questions. So at her suggestion, I created my survey and began Cycle 2 in February. When the cycle ended in June, only 38 people had responded. If I had the opportunity to go back and do a 3rd cycle, I would take the information that I've gathered in my previous 2 cycles and in my literature review and conduct the interviews that I had originally intended. When I first started this program, I was on the thesis track, and during month 2, my classmates and I were informed that we would not be completing a thesis paper, we would instead be completing an action research project. At that moment, I hated the idea. Did not want to do the action research project. It meant way too much work. It was more work than a thesis project. It was much more involved. I didn't want to do it at all. And I opposed the action research project every step of the way. And as a result of that, I got kind of behind on some of the deadlines, especially choosing my topic. Looking back, I realized that there was a reason why our professors had us do an action research project. I feel that if I'd written a thesis paper on the same topic of internet filtering, my opinion would not have changed. I still would feel that filtering is the scourge of the world and will bring down our society. But this action research process has made me an active participant in research instead of a passive participant in research. I realize now that filtering has its purpose in our schools, and that purpose is to keep our students safe. I realize that the people in charge of our schools, along with our parents and students, though, need to be educated on what is acceptable online behavior, and that schools need to impose appropriate consequences for those students who abuse their internet privileges. I probably won't delve any deeper into the topic of internet filtering. I have my answer. Filtering is not unconstitutional. Congress has every right to impose filtering on our schools. I will, however, take my newfound opinions to any school that I go to and hope to make people realize that those who are in control of the filters, those who are in control of what our students see inside of our schools, these people need to be using their common sense and not to jump to conclusions all the time when our students are online. We need to trust our students more, and we need to let them take the lead maybe. The more our schools shield our students from the media that surrounds them, the more these students are going to resent their teachers and hate school. And if we want our students to become successful in the 21st century, we can't continue teaching them with 20th century ideals.